Legal analysis now. The trial attorney is Misty Marris, who joins us. Welcome, Misty, as always. Criminal defense attorney Josh Ritter, also with us today, former prosecutor as well. Welcome, Josh. Misty, pick up on some of that because now you put together this investigation. Of course, they obviously have a lot to go on, but what's the next step now that this arrest has been made in Altoona, Pennsylvania?
Right. So the next step is going to be formal charges would be brought in New York relating to the murder. Expect to see murder charges. At that point, there'll be a discussion between the states about extradition. Keep in mind, right now he's in Pennsylvania. There would be gun-related charges that would be applicable there. But in general, there's going to be extradition where he would be arrested and be in furtherance of the more serious crime, which is going to be those murder charges. And also, Connell, don't discount, we're talking about allegations now that a ghost gun was used. So this ghost gun is something created by a 3D printer, no serial numbers, harder to trace. That could potentially trigger federal charges relating to possession of that. So there's lots of different avenues for this case to move forward.
Well, the guy looks like, a smart guy, right, Josh, by all accounts, what we can tell. So far, he's reportedly, Ivy League educated. We've been looking through what we think might be his social media. Once we confirm that, we might show some of that. All active. None of it had been taken down if it indeed is the guy. And there was a lot of planning that went into this. And apparently, again, 26 years old, they found him with some sort of a manifesto. I guess unhappy, as you might expect, with the healthcare industry. And the chief of detectives here in New York City spoke a little bit about that at their press conference earlier today. Let's listen to that clip now. Here it is.
That document is currently in the possession of the Altoona Police Department as part of their investigation. But just from briefly speaking with them, we don't think that there's any specific threats to other people mentioned in that document. But it does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
Yeah, okay, ill will towards corporate America. 3 pages, handwritten document, reportedly, Josh. So that'll get you going on motive, right, from the legal point of view?
Absolutely. I mean, he's definitely a person who is trying to send a message. We had, first of all, the etched words on the bullet casings that were recovered. There was the backpack that was recovered with the items inside of it. Now this manifesto, this person has been planning this, like you said, for some period of time, thinking about it, but not just thinking about taking this man's life, committing murder, but sending a message. I mean, part of his work is being done by all of this reporting, and his message, whatever that is, I'm sure we're going to find out, getting out there. That was part of this crime, was making sure that the reason for it, the motivations behind it, were made public.
What about, Misty, if they walked into that McDonald's, someone gives them a tip, and it was just a guy having lunch, and he did look like the guy, right? But he didn't have any of these other things with him, no manifesto that was obvious, didn't have a gun. What would have happened then? Would they have been able to make, because they brought him in on the gun charge, right? They didn't have other information, those local cops in Altoona, at least, to make an arrest. What would have happened in that case, do you think?
Well, so in any case, there has to be probable cause to make an arrest. So there would have to be evidence that would fulfill that standard. So if it was just an identification of somebody who sort of looked like that image, it would be unlikely that they would be able to move forward with the arrest. But ultimately, when you think about what they were able to find on his person, and just the fact that we had that facial image, and this is the way that ultimately the suspect was identified, by using the public and using the public to help identify this individual. So I think if it had been just a similar looking guy, you probably wouldn't have seen an arrest. But with what they were able to recover, there's obviously enough to hold him now while New York moves forward with whatever charges they deem appropriate.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, right, Josh, when the local reporter that we had from our station down in Altoona, in that area of Pennsylvania, out in west towards the Pittsburgh area, right when she was on the air, you could see the guys. I don't know if you saw it, the guys in the jackets that looked like a joint task force, right? FBI, NYPD is what I read on the back of the jacket. So they're obviously there, but that's normal, Josh, right, to see those kind of working together in a task force like this in that capacity. And could we see some federal charges as a result of, this investigation materialize as well?
Oh, a tremendous amount of resources were put into this. I mean, just the surveillance net that they had to go through, the man hours to go through all of that videotape to track him. And I imagine, too, that there is probably far more evidence that we don't know about. The police of investigators have released enough to the public so that we can help in tracking down this person. But I imagine that there is evidence in New York that they're going to be able to tie it to this suspect and determine that he's the person they've been looking for or not. Will that include state charges? Will that include federal charges? It really is to be determined. At this point, in my assessment, it's looking more like a state case as a murder taking place in New York, but who knows what else they might uncover.
You agree with that, Misty, or some of this could cross state lines, I suppose? And I mean, I don't know. How do you think it plays out in terms of the charges, Misty?
Yeah, there's a lot of collaboration between multiple jurisdictions and law enforcement, including the federal government. I agree. I think you're going to see state murder charges. But then whenever you have a gun, and especially when you have a gun, no serial number, something created in this way in his possession, not only that used in the crime, also brought across state lines, there's always the potential for some federal involvement with respect to that. But, the primary focus here is going to be the state level murder charge to the extent, right now it's a suspect to the extent that evidence can be tied together to be enough to move forward with those charges in New York.
We're going to have much more on this investigation throughout the program today. Just a quick word from you both on Daniel Penny while we have you as well. As I mentioned at the top, not guilty. Misty, we talked on Friday when they dismissed the first case, which was more serious, the manslaughter case. I guess it surprised some people that it came back so quickly, not guilty on criminally negligent homicide in the subway chokehold case here in New York. Did it surprise you, or are you expecting them to come back pretty quick after Friday?
I was really expecting a mistrial because all of the arguments that would have been in place for manslaughter with a deadlock would have been in place for criminally negligent homicide as well. Both one side says it's justified, the other doesn't. They can't come to an agreement. But I think the dropping of that manslaughter charge, I think jurors went home over the weekend and said, what the heck was that? So coming back into the courtroom, clearly holdouts that wanted to convict on manslaughter ultimately decided not guilty on the lesser charge.
Yeah, it didn't take him long, Josh. What'd you make of it?
No, I agree with Misty. I was expecting a deadlocked jury as well, but because if they were deadlocked on the more serious charge, you would expect them to be deadlocked on the less serious charge, and certainly not arrive at an acquittal, if any verdict at all. So I think hopefully we might hear more from the jurors and what they were thinking, but I think you might be right. They took the weekend and they said, you know what, we've had enough ourselves.
It was interesting because they obviously went through a lot last week in deliberating, and then they couldn't come to the conclusion. And then when the judge dismissed it, they come back Monday, and that's it. Not guilty right away. All right, like I said, we're going to get back to that in some detail. Thank you, Misty. Thank you, Josh. We'll be back to you as we want to stay on this.